All right. Well, I will have it pulled up in a moment. So if it doesn't, we can always switch.
Thanks. So welcome to the now official beginning of our October chapter chat. If you are not in the chapter leader Slack, please join. This is a great way to continue the conversation and to start other conversations about, any topics that you are interested in and want to discuss with your fellow ESW members. Just a reminder that these friendly faces and names might be answering your questions, might show up on calls. We're all here to support you and to make sure that you have the year that you want to have and that your chapter can be as strong as it can be. And so never hesitate to reach out with questions, any concerns that you have about, the functioning of your chapter, about things that are changing this semester, about possible resources. That is what we are here for. So just want to reiterate that this is supposed to be participatory. So please feel free to jump in, share ideas, add to the discussion. That is how we all learn as much as we can and really get to where we need to be. And also, of course, we will be uploading past presentations and this presentation to our YouTube channel, and keep an eye out for all of our future chapter chats. Potential topics to change, but these are the types of things that we can discuss. And if, of course, you have any ideas for the types of topics that you want us to have a chapter chat about, always reach out and let us know, because these are for you. So to jump into this, before you can start talking about fundraising and sponsorship, it's important to know your budget. And creating your budget as early as possible is helpful because it gives you time to, figure out what you need in terms of fundraising and sponsorship. And one of the important things about budgeting is really to write down absolutely everything that you think you might need, not to start paring it down, early. You can always get there and prioritize after you start. But the first important thing is really just to think about anything that you might need and that your organization might need, and figure out all of the estimated costs. And then you can figure out how much your club already has in funding, how much you get from your student club funding, from your department, from your college, any of the sources that you normally get funding from, and then figure out the difference and how you can possibly make that up. In addition to that, even if there are funding sources that that you have yearly, make sure that you know how to properly secure that funding. Every organization has their own requirements for, documents submitted and timelines. And, you never want to not get funding just because you didn't submit something when it was a given that you would get the funding. That has definitely happened to people before. And if it does happen, don't freak out. Just let us know and we'll figure out, other ways that we can support you. And also that's why we'll talk about, other sources of fundraising and sponsorship so that you can be diversifying the money that you are bringing into your organization. And also importantly, make sure that you're documenting, your budgeting, where you're getting money from, how much, and what you're spending it on, which will help you in future years figure out, what you have, what you need, and how to better budget and better fundraise. So I'm curious to hear from you guys. How has your budgeting process been this year? Do you have kind of a standard way that you formulate a budget, or does it kind of vary depending on the year? Please don't be shy.
I guess I could go. It's been interesting this year actually because we actually didn't need any funding for anything.
That's nice.
I mean, since everything's virtual, not a lot of her events required any money to plan and actually host. So we haven't really been focusing on this side, but I guess what we're still trying to do is we used to do a sponsorship packet to get companies to sponsor our projects. So we're still trying to go on that and still trying to get it out, even though it's kind of late. But
Oh, I think that's great, and we'll talk a bit more about that later in the call as well.
But yeah, that's pretty much it for us.
Nice, thanks.
So Akron, I guess we kind of, I don't know, we have a new treasurer this year, so we're a little, I guess, behind on really creating a budget. We lost our treasurer kind of unexpectedly, so there wasn't really a transition or overlap period. So we're still working on catching up with that, but it's not like we're in a bad place, I guess I should say.
That's good. Do you have documents from like last year that kind of help you, from your previous treasurer?
Yes, we definitely have a lot of documentation, and all our funds run through the school, so they keep track of everything.
Nice.
So we've got like printouts of everything, so that's good. It's just getting everything on track with those kinds of changes.
Yeah, and that can be hard to plan for, if you're not expecting to have to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
So hopefully this will be helpful for you.
Yeah.
Good. So of course, once you have your budget and you figure out, what that gap is and what you need, your first thought is probably we should fundraise. So interesting things to think about are, the types of fundraisers and how that corresponds to how much money you're looking for. So for smaller amounts, doing local fundraisers, and this is for, any year, not necessarily specifically this year. I'm sorry for not updating that. But that's where you think about, doing local restaurant nights, or, selling merch, or, hosting on campus fundraising events, bake sales, that kind of thing. And there are a lot of creative ways that chapters have done that. Some people have done like, make your own succulent planters and things like that. There's a lot of fun you can do with these types of local fundraisers, and there are definitely still things that you can do this year, and we'll get to that on the next slide. If you're looking for bigger commitments, working with your academic department, local companies, finding grants is a really good way to approach this. That can include also the ESW project grants, and other organizations like Biomimicry Challenge or Autodesk that provide money to your chapter depending on different requirements. And, oh, sorry, let me go back. And then anything more than that, and even, if you're looking for $1,000, sponsorship can be a really helpful way to bring in money to the organization. And sometimes it's more than just money. Sometimes organizations will donate supplies. Sometimes they'll work with you in terms of mentorship, or they'll highlight your projects. But having a corporate sponsor can be a really beneficial thing. So we'll talk about how to go about that as well. So when you start to think about planning fundraising events, right now, I know that there are probably things that you normally would do as a go-to that, if you're not on campus or you're not allowed to host events on campus, are very difficult. So some of the things that definitely are still available are doing online events. So you could host a game night or a trivia night and have everyone, Venmo in a small fee in order to participate. And it could even be that, the winner gets, a small portion of the money that was collected. But ideally, most of it goes back to your organization. There definitely still, actually, I would go and say definitely, there's a possibility that local restaurants are still doing, sponsored restaurant nights where if, people go and they say that they're there to support your organization, that you get, part of the proceeds from that.
Also, if
Yes.
I think if restaurants might do like takeout versions of this too. So if you talk to
Yes.
them, they might still be willing to do this with like a takeout option.
Yeah. There was definitely Cornell's chapter used to do fundraisers with a local pizza place, and it was definitely like most people went and did takeout. It was kind of a hole in the wall. There wasn't a lot of seating. So my guess is that local restaurants are probably still into this with the takeout version, especially because it might bring more people at a time where restaurants aren't necessarily doing great. But it never hurts to ask. Selling club merch can be a good way to do fundraising if that is something that you can do remotely. I know it is harder if you have to like send it to people versus having people pick it up. It could also be that you like give everyone a set time on campus to, do one-on-one pickups versus like having bigger groups. And it
Also, a lot of, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I was going to say it depends on what your university is or isn't allowing, and make sure that you follow all of those guidelines.
Some like merchandising companies too will send your product directly to the person who orders it. So you're able to like place the order with the company directly rather than having to like go through you guys to the next place.
Oh, that is very smart. Yep. And then another suggestion is crowdfunding. So some chapters will do like a giving day campaign where they ask friends and family and especially alumni to donate, and putting together like a small video of what your organization is working on and what you need the money for is helpful. Also, any personal outreach is always going to be better than like stock messages. The one thing I would say with that is just double check with your university's policies on crowdfunding, because some universities are strict about this, especially if your bank account is through the university. And then some other interesting ideas, I already mentioned Autodesk workshops. So they'll host like workshops on different CAD skills, computer aided design. And for having people in your organization participate, they will, I think like up to $500 to the organization. And then another interesting thing that somebody suggested, was to have your chapter offer their skills to community organizations or other people in the community, helping especially older people with technology setup or teaching classes on engineering topics that you guys are familiar with, or sustainability topics as well, or offering to sustainability audits of people's homes. That could be an interesting way. And also, of course, virtual being the preference versus in-person help. But that could be a great way for your organization, to have better community relations and community outreach, and also to bring in money. So I want to hear what you guys have been thinking in terms of fundraising strategies. How have your thoughts on this changed this semester? And kind of just, what you guys do for funding and fundraising.
So Akron is doing like dine and donates this semester. We normally do, but like the local Chipotle and Penn
good.
Station are offering that still. So we're doing that. And then we still had a lot of t-shirts from last semester, so we're working on selling those as well.
Those are both great options. I hope that works out well.
Thanks.
I guess we got most of our funding from our university president council chapter. So we're kind of just using that for now, but we are looking into maybe doing like a t-shirt design contest, because we used to do those in the past couple of years and then have them merge and then sell them for winter quarter. So I guess it's just
that'd be
one of them.
fun.
Yeah.
If you're looking to start a design, like a design contest, we have a branding guide. So if you want, like, we'll send that out maybe after this, just so everyone like has it. So you have like all of the
Mhm.
colors that we use on hand, and it's just way easier, and the fonts and everything, like, than having to like literally search through random documents to find it. Is much easier. Just go to the guide.
Oh yeah, I think I remember seeing it in our folder, so I think we should have that. But unless it's like
Okay, cool.
updated or something.
No, I think it's the same. It's been the same for a while, but as
Okay,
long as you
cool.
have it, yeah, it definitely makes every time I have to do anything for the organization, I always look at it because I can never remember what the fonts are. So
Yeah, true.
definitely useful.
Right.
Thanks. And then in terms of sponsorship, if you're planning to look for sponsors, figuring out who your potential supporters are is a good first step. And this is usually organizations that have where you have personal connections. So places where alumni work, or parents work, or where your chapter members have interned, and then you can have like those people reach out much more personally to those organizations. Similarly, local organizations, especially those interested in sustainability or public service, or those that already have ties to the university, will generally be a good place to start. And then the third category is larger engineering companies, and a lot of times they will have funds that are like set aside for student projects. Although they won't always advertise that, which is something you should keep in mind. So just because they don't say like, hey, look, we fund and support student organizations, that doesn't mean they don't. And then the last category of this is grants. So looking for things like ESW project grants. The EPA P3 program is actually a pretty cool one to look into. And all of these are great places. And then figuring out, and reaching out to more than one is always good, because you never know if reaching out is going to pan out, or what the organization's timeline is. I remember we wrote up a sponsorship packet and we sent it to an organization that somebody had interned at and had already like asked about, and we got it pretty early, like, yeah, we think this is going to work. But then the process of going through all of their paperwork and figuring out, it actually was for the year after we originally thought we were going to get funding. So just keep that in mind, that, a lot of these relationships take time, but they're usually quite worth it. So don't be discouraged. And then organization is important, especially if things go more than a semester, and you want to make sure that, if you're graduating, or, whoever's in charge of this is passing it on to another person, that everything is organized. Or if, communication gets lost, just keeping track of everything that you're working on is always beneficial. And then importantly, it's good to create a sponsorship packet, and that you can send out, that will be a professional explanation of your organization, of what you're working on, of what you would use the money for. And yeah, this is key. Succinctly and accurately describe the goal of your chapter and why the donation will be important and helpful. And we have a template for this, which I am going to pull up just to show you kind of what is on it. So, and you're not required to use the template. It's just here as a guide, and to help you figure out what works for you, and make it easier. So, make sure that your college name is there, starting off with a picture, especially one that has multiple people or a project that really pulls them in and says like, this seems like a very cool chapter. We want to support them. And then this is where you'll put most of the meat of your content. So introduce your chapter, explain like your goals, explain how they can support you. And then we have a blurb about ESW as an organization, and you can explain more about your chapter. And talking about projects is helpful because most of the time the funding is for you to work on projects. So showing that you have, ideas and things are well thought out is helpful. And you're not required to put a ton here, but however many projects you want to highlight is, especially if it's visual, you add photos, it can be a few pages. And then some chapters have found it's helpful to have sponsorship levels. So you have set like monetary levels that make it easier. Also, there's a typo in there. That's whoops. Make it easier for the organization that is funding you to figure out, what you're expecting. And also, make sure that you show the different ways that they can support you. So sometimes that is money, sometimes that is material, sometimes that is time or space, or mentorship, etc. And so just anything that would benefit your organization or ways that you would like organizations to help, laying that out very succinctly and very clearly can be helpful. And then contact information and ways for them to find out more about the work you're doing and follow the work you're doing. And if you've previously had sponsors, thanking them, especially if you're planning to send this out to them as well, is helpful. And this again highlights, how to reach out to our contact department with any questions, our branding guide. And you can always reach out to your CRC or post in the Slack if you have questions about this as well, because multiple chapters have done similar sponsorship packets. And then lastly, following up and thanking your donors and giving them project updates is very helpful and makes it much more likely that they will be continued sponsors versus having it be a one-time thing.
Even just a newsletter from your organization, not a sort of just like information for them to have about where their money is going is very helpful.
Definitely. So Jashna, you said that you guys have worked on a sponsorship packet before?
Yeah, we actually started doing it 2 years ago, I think, but the issue is that we've always been putting it aside every time we get to it. So we have a completed packet, but right now we just gotta focus on emailing the companies, getting contact information and things like that. I guess like the other thing I wasn't sure about is that how does the actual like donation work in terms of like if a company decides to sponsor you, how does like that transaction work? Because I think like something that's also come up is that we need a tax ID or something like that to set up like. So yeah, I'm not sure how that works.
Yeah, it probably depends on your university's like fundraising guidelines and how their bank accounts are set up. So talking to somebody in like the budgeting office there will be helpful. Generally, like organizations should be able to write checks made out to your chapter that you'd be able to cash. But I think importantly, like if you have somebody that you talk to at your university who knows about like the specific requirements for your budgeting and fundraising, making sure that you follow that would be helpful.
Okay.
What type of organizations are you reaching out to?
So like you said, we are trying to contact our alumni and seeing where they work and seeing if they'll be willing to give us contacts or for that. And I think we also have a list of, like you said, the eco-friendly or green tech company.
Perfect.
In the local area, but it's just we just got to get to emailing.
Yeah, it's definitely cold. Like reach outs can be scary, and I totally get that.
Yeah.
So, yep. And doing it as a team, like if, instead of having one person responsible for it, saying like, guys, can we get on a call and like draft this email together or something like that can definitely be helpful.
Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure.
You guys have any other questions about sponsorship or anything else?
No.
Well, of course, if you do, feel free to reach out to your CRC or post in the Slack. And I'm glad to hear that you guys are generally doing well and are able to fundraise and to get funding this semester. And I hope that that continues to go well. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much.